Hello and welcome back to J.P.s Retro World. I'm your man JP, and today we are continuing on with WrestleMania, talking about those old WrestleManias. Last time we talked about WrestleMania 11 and 12. This time we're going to cover WrestleMania 13 and 14. Now, WrestleMania 13 took place in 1997. And in those days, the Royal Rumble winner would typically get a shot at the title at WrestleMania. However, that year, technically, Stone Cold Steve Austin won the Rumble. But because he had a feud with Bret, they put him in a match with Bret at WrestleMania 13. And then somehow The Undertaker ended up with a title shot at WrestleMania 13, which would put him against Psycho Sid, who was the champion at the time. Now, I was always a big fan of Psycho Sid. I always liked Sid, whether it was Sid Vicious in WCW, or Sid Justice in WWF, or if it was just Psycho Sid in WWF, or back to Sid Vicious in WCW. It didn't matter. I always liked the guy. I always thought the guy was great. A lot of people talk about how he wasn't a very good wrestler, in-ring wrestler. I disagree. I think that although he wasn't like super technical, he wasn't doing a lot of collegiate Olympic style wrestling. He wasn't doing a lot of suplexes or whatever, but he was doing like big clubbing forearm shots to the back, big boots, clotheslines, elbow, power slams, the power bomb. He would do, choke slam. He would do strong big man moves because that's what he was. He was a strong big man. He wasn't super quick, but he was powerful. And he was over. The fans loved him. And The Undertaker, he had won a shot at Sid. So being WrestleMania 13 being considered an unlucky number, only The Undertaker could call WrestleMania 13 his lucky number. So, The Undertaker ended up winning the title. He ended up becoming the WWF champion. And I think he ended up losing the title later on down the road, setting up a match with Shawn and Bret at Survivor Series. And we all know what happened at Survivor Series in 97. We're not going to go into it here. But there's the VHS tape that I have. It's still part of that same VHS collection. Now, WrestleMania 14, which I'm going to talk about in a second, that's the last one in this VHS series. But, yeah, so as you can see on the back, it shows a photo shot of a match between Rocky Maivia and the Sultan, Intercontinental title on the line there. At the time, people they weren't really digging Rocky Maivia. It wasn't until he started calling himself The Rock before he started gaining momentum and he started gaining in popularity, starting off as a heel, joining the Nation of Domination. But then later on, people started digging The Rock, started digging what he was doing, and eventually he became one of the most popular wrestlers of all time. I was never a big fan, but that's just me. I'm weird. I don't just follow the trends for the most part. I don't just cheer for somebody just because they happen to be popular. I like who I like and I don't like who I don't like. But anyway, yeah, WrestleMania 13, 1997. 1997 was actually a pretty good year for us wrestling fans because on one hand you have the WWF, who were starting to gain momentum. They were kind of getting their butts kicked by WCW for a while, but in 97, things were starting to pick up. Things were starting to steamroll and they were starting to pick up momentum. Certain stars were on the rise and they were about to turn the corner. And then on the other hand, you had WCW and the NWO was in full swing. He had Hollywood Hogan as the champion. He had that spray painted NWO WCW belt. And guys like Sting and Lex Luger, they were gunning for Hogan and they were gunning to end the NWO. But in WWF, you have The Undertaker winning the WWF title from Sid. And I think after that, Sid kind of went away. He kind of went back to WCW and resumed his career there. So that was 1997. Now the next year was 1998. This is when, now in 1997 was when the WWF kind of started to go with the Attitude Era. You know, the look of Raw changed where the ring was different. All the ropes were red, and they started calling it Raw is War. They had the steel girder stage with a ramp that came down. And so, but WrestleMania 7, or WrestleMania 13, I should say, was still within the realm of the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation, the old school WWF. But by 1998, that all had changed. By 1998, we're in full Attitude Era swing. And then we have this, WrestleMania 14. Now, WrestleMania 14, of course, was also centered around the main event, which was Stone Cold Steve Austin challenging Shawn Michaels, because Stone Cold had won the Royal Rumble for a second year in a row, even though the previous year was controversial. Bret Hart should have won that, but that was a long time ago. This is where we're at now, 1998. So Stone Cold wins the title from Shawn Michaels with Mike Tyson, guest referee. He made the 3 count. And I think it shows on the back, you see Triple H and Owen Hart for the European title. That's when Kane came in and wrestled his brother, The Undertaker. And there was a plethora of title matches. You know, I think there was a light heavyweight championship match. And in the very beginning of this event, there's a 15 tag team battle royal where the final the final team in the match would end up being the number 1 contenders for the tag titles. And it's actually when the Legion of Doom made their triumphant return with a new manager, Sonny. But they ditched Sonny, and they brought in, I think they brought Paul Ellering back in or something along those lines. But anyway, Sonny didn't last long as their manager. And then she went on to manage teams like, you know, the Smoking Guns, and she ended up, you know, having a kind of a bad reputation in the WWF for some various reasons that I'm not going to go into. But anyway, so this is the first WrestleMania I thought was kind of lackluster, even though the card was like chock full of matches and stuff. There was a lot of matches on this card, but I don't know, because I guess because I wasn't really a big fan of the Attitude Era. This event didn't really resonate with me as much. Yeah, and that's just the reality of it. You know, WWF was kind of going a new direction. And for them, it was good because they were making a lot of money, and you know they were really hot. You know, they were gonna get super hot the next year, 1999. But in 1998, they were still, you know, pretty hot. WCW was kind of on its downfall, kind of on a downward spiral. We could see kind of the cracks in the foundation over at WCW. But eventually, we all know what happened. WWF won the war. But anyway, that's WrestleMania 13 and 14. So, and that marked the last time we would see Shawn Michaels for several years, because Shawn Michaels wouldn't make a return to WrestleMania until WrestleMania 19, which was held in Seattle, which is kind of close to my old stomping grounds. I'm from Portland. Seattle's just a couple hours away from Portland, so, you know, so that was yeah. So Shawn Michaels, his last time we would see him for a long time, but he would come back sort of as the commissioner of the WWF, and he would make appearances here and there, and eventually, though, he would make an in-ring return. And I actually think his second run was every bit as good, if not better, than his first run. Just because he was a little older, a little wiser, and he could still perform at a high level, and everything, you know, he was really fun to watch. So with that, let's talk a little bit about this year's WrestleMania that's going to take place. Now, last time I originally predicted that Cody Rhodes would go on to win the title, and I still stand by that. However, because of the CM Punk injury at the Royal Rumble, WWE is probably going to have to shift some things around to where they're going to slide Cody in probably against Seth Rollins for the World Heavyweight Championship, which I think is the Raw Championship. And then Roman Reigns might actually end up wrestling The Rock, of all people. They're bringing The Rock in. The Rock, he already sits on the board of directors at WWE. You know, they just brought him in. He's officially part of the WWE, TKO, UFC family. He sits on the board of directors. And so it's not too much of a stretch to get him to come back, at least for one more big moment, one more big match. Although he might sign a contract and he might get back in the ring. Who knows? But nevertheless, it looks like The Rock might wrestle Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. So, you know, we'll just see what happens. But I still maintain that had CM Punk not gotten injured, he would have been up against Seth Rollins because of their rivalry, and Cody Rhodes would wrestle Roman Reigns for the championship. But because CM Punk got injured, the storyline goes that because the World Heavyweight Championship technically would have been like the NWA/WCW title, because it kind of resembles the big gold belt, you know, they're kind of putting off as Cody's thinking, hey, you know, that's the title that my dad once held. And that's the title that was really important to my father and my family. So I'm going to wrestle Seth Rollins and I'm going to win this title. So Cody Rhodes might become like the top guy, at least on Raw. But honestly, whatever title that Cody Rhodes wins is the only title that really matters to me. Now, from what I understand, they might bring in Braun Breaker to wrestle Gunther for the Intercontinental title, which will be a great match. Gunther's been an awesome Intercontinental champion. He's been really dominant. He's really, really convincing as a guy that could just destroy anybody that gets in the ring with. And Braun Breaker, he's a Steiner. So, you know, that's going to be a good match. And there's a lot of cool stuff happening. And, you know, I'm kind of digging it. And so we'll see what happens. You know, who knows? Whatever title Cody chooses to wrestle for, I'm all in. Especially if he wins. Because I keep beating the Cody Rhodes horse because I love Cody Rhodes. I think he's awesome. And I'm a big fan. So anyway, what are your thoughts about WrestleMania 13 and or 14? Leave them in the comments below. And if you're new here, I almost forgot to do that. I almost forgot to say if you are new. Sorry. Just killing time. Just wasting time, rather. So, if you're new, please go ahead and take the time to click that like button. And go ahead and take the time to subscribe. And I will definitely see you next time.